Hello and welcome to Agree to Disagree, the series where I take some opinions from around the Fire Emblem community, I pose them to my guest, and we discuss whether or not we agree with them, and why. Before we start, I would like to thank the people who back the channel on Patreon and support me in making content like this and everything else on the channel. For more information on the benefits of backing for just £1 a month, check the link in the description. If you have a take you would like to see appear in this series, you can either drop it in the comments or there is a channel for it in the Discord server, which is linked in the description. If you are a content creator who is interested in appearing on this series, feel free to get in touch via either Twitter or Discord. Lastly, this video was recorded a couple of months ago prior to my hiatus, so it is possible some of the opinions of both myself and my guest have changed somewhat between now and then, particularly when relating to Fire Emblem Engage, as it has now been out for over twice as long as it was at the time of recording. Today, I am joined by EatUrGrns, otherwise known as Tegan.
Hello. I'm back.
Turn
back
from
to
FE7.
Yeah, I'm back to talk about how cool Dart is.
So Tegan and I did the FE7 Buy Our Units co-op together.
I really hope you have a take on Dart.
I don't, I'm afraid. There are no Dart takes. You should submit one. I'm sure you've got your opinions now.
I was thinking about doing that, but I didn't want to like sway anyone's opinion and like, as you know, just abuse like my influence here.
Because at this point you're appearing on this channel as much as I am.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm EatUrGrns or Tegan, whatever. I play a lot of Fire Emblem. I do stuff like put Sophia in FE7, and that video is not gonna come out until like 2027 or whatever. But yeah, eventually I'll get that video done. But I also have like the Engage Manning Let's Play on my channel that I'm sporadically updating, as well as some other random Fire Emblem stuff. I play a wide variety of the games.
Nice.
And I'm sure, yeah, John was going to have everything in the description for that.
Yeah, so a link to Tegan's channel will be in the description. And, well, are you ready for our first take of the day?
My body's ready.
You're as ready as you're going to be. The first one, it's quite a hot one. It's one that came up a lot, and basically I had to amalgamate a bunch of comments into one because it was written in about 300 different ways. Reclassing is boring and makes the games that have it worse.
Oh, God.
We're going in on the deep end.
No, why's it gotta be this one?
I'm happy to lead off if you want me to. It's
Sure.
up to you.
Sure.
Okay.
I want your take first.
Okay, I'm happy to go first on this one. So, I think reclassing is very game dependent, and I think on some games it's made a lot more sense than in others. But even in the games where I think it's been used better, it still had its problems. Three Houses was interesting with reclassing. It's probably the one that most people will jump to first, I think, when they think of this concept. Because it was a game where almost everyone didn't have a strict class path to follow. They didn't really start in a class. They all just were in Commoner and Noble outside of your later recruits or your faculty members or things like that. So it's one where they really could have done a lot with flexibility in that game, but essentially there was an issue regarding Wyverns in particular, where basically every physical unit, it might not always be their best class, but most physical units would do very, very well in Wyvern, to a point where it was basically the default in a lot of situations, which is never great. I think it would have probably benefited more if those obvious choices were more distinct by character rather than by just put everyone in Wyvern and you can't go wrong. You should be able to go wrong by putting some units in some classes, I think. And some units should have been probably more catered towards other classes, although, of course, other classes were absolutely viable and in some cases even optimal. The Wyvern emblem issue of Three Houses was quite prevalent for your physical units, but I think where it's even more of an issue is in games like Shadow Dragon, because you're sort of taking predefined units and they kind of lose a bit of their identity, particularly with units like Jagan becoming a Wyvern or a Sniper or something like that. It causes quite a few issues in games like that, more so than I think in the more open-ended games where anyone can become anything. There is also questions about sort of unit identity. A lot of units can feel quite similar. Now, some games do things to sort of combat like personal abilities, combat arts that are distinct to each unit, abilities distinct to each unit, things like that. But obviously, if classes were limited by unit, those classes would also help to define them a little bit more. I think I don't know if I'd necessarily say it makes the games that have it worse. I think that's kind of where I'm a little bit stuck right now.
I have a hard time really agreeing or disagreeing with that because maybe like in Shadow Dragon, although I'm not very versed in the DS Arcanea games, it's weird there because like you're taking predefined characters and then just putting them in weird classes.
Yeah.
Like Sniper or whatever, or Wyvern. I think reclassing can be cool, if the game is designed around not spamming it or whatever. But if I have to prose a very extremely nuclear take, I think the Wyvern emblem in Three Houses is, I don't care because I think people who do that are bad at the game.
There's definitely a case that like Wyvern Emblem and Three Houses is definitely overblown. It's not as problematic as it's always made out to be, and you're not just going to have a team of 12 Wyvern Lords or something like that.
I think like, I don't know, at least the way I play now is the only ones I always put in Wyvern are like EatUrGrns, which I think is a problem. Like that is her best class because it's just has to be like a top 2 character in that game in the best class in the game is frankly dumb.
Yeah, and I think especially when that character has a unique class and you're discouraged from using it because there's just a better option, that's probably not ideal.
Yeah. I guess that's a interesting way to put it, is that if it takes me out of a cooler class that I think is more funny to look at, then sure. But when the alternatives are like, do I make, I don't know, Leonie a Bone Knight or a Wyvern? I'm probably just going to do Wyvern because I like that more. Or as with her, the problem with I find with the Three Houses system is that I don't think a lot of characters actually they can be Wyverns, but the way I see Three Houses now is that I don't like doing personally like doing Wyverns because I just don't think it solves everyone's like main issues in Three Houses, in terms of I find like Felix doesn't actually do anything spectacular in Wyvern, and that back then people thought, oh, Felix is the best character in the game because you put him in Wyvern.
Yeah, now it's Sniper or Grappler or War Master if you're a bit out there, but yeah.
So that's like my take on it. Obviously, like I think Wyvern Emblem is just something that annoys me because I just think that's not an exploration of Three Houses that people should just look at and then dismiss about Three Houses.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the criticisms of FE4, right, where it's genealogy of the Horsey War. Yeah, it's catchy and it sounds good, but it's not entirely representative of the game as a whole.
Oh, I know you and I like disagree about Seth Emblem as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
But
no, it's not.
I guess it is kind of like a problem in sort of Engage as well, with Warrior being a very prevalent class and almost every
I find it
unit
actually worse in Engage.
I think that's probably fair. I think Warrior is probably more polarizing in Engage in terms of this is more units optimal class, but also I've had less time to look into the game. It's only been out a couple of months.
Yeah.
So.
Well, my issue with Engage is that it's just easy to put people in classes.
Yes.
Whereas in Three Houses, like, I don't like that you can put everyone in Wyvern. I think there should have been a limit. But even then, you have to actually train people to be in Wyvern. And I know people hated that. But it was an artificial limitation on putting the Wyvern emblem thing. Like Dimitri sometimes doesn't want to go into Wyvern because it just takes forever and it's distracting him from doing other more important skill training like his authority.
Yeah.
So recently we just do, I don't know, Paladin Dimitri or Swordmaster Dimitri because it's just easier to train him in those where he has boons or doesn't have to fight through the Axebane or the Flying Neutrality. Not that it's overly hard to do that, but in Engage I find you can just put I don't know, Kagetsu in Wyvern without any effort, or Marin in Wyvern without any effort. And that, I don't know how critical that will be to or detrimental that will be to Engage's meta going forward.
How do you feel about the Sacred Stones style of reclassing, where you get a couple of options? Obviously, Sacred Stones has some inherent flaws in the fact that in most cases there's just a correct choice with Garrick
Yeah.
maybe the only exception to that rule. Maybe
yeah,
Ross, but how do
yeah,
you feel about
well,
that system
yeah.
as a whole? If it was a little bit better sort of developed?
Well, it is. I played a bit of Awakening. Well, I played it multiple times, but I'm not like an expert in Awakening. Awakening does have that system, sorta. And it's okay in Awakening, I find, because sometimes I want to like pick. Oh, do I do Dono as a hero, or Dono as a fighter, type of scenarios? And like in that game, I think it's a little more interesting. Obviously, that game also has the problem with Sacred Stones, where it's way less. There's probably a very clear answer. Like if you're a Pegasus Knight, you're going to Dark Flyer. Sniper's kind of just banned that game, I think. So you just go into a Bow Knight if you're using like an archer in general. So I don't know. That system I find is cool, except it isn't, because it's not like the choices is pretty apparent which one you should do.
Yeah.
And such. I think like you can do a good system with that. It's just I don't know.
Yeah.
Give me a better choice. So,
I think it's hard to come down either way on this one, but I think after that conversation, I'm actually tempted to lean towards disagree. I don't think reclassing is inherently boring. I just think it's been quite poorly executed. There probably is a world though where it can be used quite well.
Actually, I forgot. Awakening does have the second seal thing.
Okay.
So in that sense, yeah, you can completely go into a different class line.
Yeah.
In 3 houses with some in Awakening, which yeah. Obviously, I think we just already said that we're not Fates players at all, and everyone says that Fates was the goated one in terms of reclassing. So I don't know.
Maybe we are missing a bit of context there, but I think I'm going to come down on disagree, with the caveat that I don't think its execution has been particularly great as implemented so far, but there's definitely some world in which like a more limited... I guess my point would be global reclassing probably can lead to a game being quite boring, but reclassing just as a concept I think could have some merit and be used quite well, just to give a bit of flexibility. And yeah, if a unit could go like Swordmaster or Hero or, you know, Warrior or something like that, like, okay, that's fairly standard. It's when you start getting, you know, I'll put Louis and Sage and like Chloe in Great Knight and things like that, where I think it starts getting a little bit off the rails.
Engage, I think, is just new, so I don't know what's good.
Yeah.
I also forgot to mention something like Echoes, where well, that one doesn't really have classing, but it has the Villager promotions. I don't have anything smart to say besides I think the choice between for Faye in particular is funny, is whether or not you do a Peg Knight or Healer, which one of them is vastly better than the other, and I would hazard you to guess which one. I know.
Yeah, I've got a Fates playthrough coming up, so I might keep myself a little bit blind on that one. So not Fate, sorry, Echoes. Okay. But where do you come down on agree or disagree? No sitting on the fence. We don't allow that.
Oh wow, I can't. I'm just gonna say strongly disagree, because I think it boils down to people talking about Three Houses, and that makes me. I think
Three Houses probably pushed it over the edge a little bit in their opinions of reclassing, but yeah, I think in general it has caused problems for some games in the past. I'd especially look at the DS games, where it probably has made the game somewhat worse that it's in there, but I don't think it's bad as a concept. I think it could definitely be utilised well.
I'll okay, maybe I'll go disagree, because like I agree that it does destroy unit identity sometimes, but again,
I think it's part of the fact that like in our head we're thinking like, oh, you can go Grappler Felix or War Master Felix or Sniper Felix or Swordmaster Felix, when what it actually could lead to is you can go Warlock Felix and all of this other weird thing. I guess that's not that bad because he has a reason boon, but you know what I mean, like you can go with these really off the wall classes where it does destroy unit identity, Great Knight Lysithea and things like that, where it just loses a little bit of sense.
Or you can just go Warmonk Leone, and then you actually are a good player.
Yeah, I preferred Valkyrie Leone myself, but yeah, both valid options. So that should wrap up our first take. I think we ended up evened out on the end, both on disagree. So, quite an interesting one, though. I think reclassing as general is quite an interesting topic. But the second take here, this one is one I've never seen before. Okay. But I think it's quite interesting.
All right.
Bows should be the only option for ranged physical damage. So this is implying there should be a removal of
I like this one.
A removal of things like javelins, spears, hand axes, tomahawks, and I guess knives would fall into that category too. Or at least 2 ranged knives.
We'll see. Mm-hmm. I like this question. I think this is a very good question.
Feel free to take the lead.
I like the systems where bows are the only viable 2 range physical attacks. And a lot. Obviously, we're both like sort of versed. Well, you're very versed in 3 houses. I like to say I'm a high level amateur at that game. But I like bows in 3 houses. Maybe bows were too good in 3 houses. That's why Engage sought to nerf them a bit. It's more like a side nerf in Engage. But I like the capacity that bows are better than jabs or hand axes. I think jabs and hand axes, the games that they're very good in, make them
GBA
way
and
too
Talius,
trivial.
right? Like
and I love Radiant Dawn as well, but it's the metas behind of those games are like FE7, FE8, FE9, Radiant Dawn are forge your 1-2 range hand axes, or stock up on those. You saw our shopping trip.
Yeah.
And while it's good for those games when you're, and I think, kind of casually playing and not knowing what you're doing, I just don't really like face tanking that much in general. I think it's a very boring way to play through Fire Emblem sometimes. Whereas in a game like FE6, which a lot of people don't like, I'm not among those because I think that game's hilarious.
I like what I've played of it so far.
Yeah. Hand axes and javelins are bad.
Yes,
in that game.
Because of the accuracy issues, right?
Because of the accuracy, which I think is a fair trade-off, because the inherent value of that weapon type is so overpowered. You just see how broken it is, and the game is succeeding it. That I like that distinction that this is a strong weapon, but it has bad accuracy, so you can't rely on it. And it does emphasize the use of bows in that scenario as the actual chip that you're gonna do. The whole concept of archers in Fire Emblem is that they're strong, accurate chip. Maybe not strong, but accurate chip. Whereas in games like FE7, FE8, they're just you kill people with this weapon because it's busted.
Yeah, so I agree from a player perspective. I think the games really thrive when bows are a viable weapon type, and hand axes and javelins are dialed back a bit. And I think you could sort of let loose a little bit more on things like spears, tomahawks, things like that. Where I think 3 houses actually quite badly suffers is that hand axes and javelins are not viable enemy weapons. Which I think can make sort of range abusing enemies very, very easy. In practically every enemy in 3 houses, you don't have to take damage unless you want to, because you will just be able to outrange them and kill them. The most physical enemies just have 1 range, most ranged enemies just have 2 range, and then your archers, you can either 1 range them or you can 3 range them, even against mages.
Well, I think that's more of a 3 houses problem than it is the meta of hand axes and etc. 3 houses, I don't even remember the last time an enemy had a hand axe on 3 houses besides Hilda on chapter 1, or Edelgard in chapter 1.
Yeah, there's Edelgard or Hilda on chapter 1, and I think there's one other that just can't place right now. But I think the real place where it becomes an issue is boss abusing. Bosses get very abusable when they don't have 2 range. I think Geb I can't remember if this is in default FE8, But when I did Sacred
No,
Stone,
he doesn't have
two
a
range, right?
two-range weapon, or
Yeah.
like a 1-2 range. He has like I think he has a bow.
Okay,
Maybe.
when I did Sacred Stone Super Hard, he just had 2 1-range weapons, and I was just sat there pinging him down from range over the course of like 10 turns, and he died. And I think that lack of 1-2 range does quite badly hurt bosses sometimes. I actually do think bows would be good if they were the player's only option for ranged physical damage, at least in the early game. If when you get later you get something like a tomahawk or a javelin, or a spear that's limited use maybe, then you could maybe see that thrive a little bit more. But if they were the player's only option for 2 range, I think that would be quite good for the game. I think enemies should retain that 1-2 range access, though. I think it's important for enemies to have that.
Look at the person who didn't play FE6.
I'm on what, chapter 7 coming up? Now that Engage is all wrapped up, that'll be starting back up again soon, and it should be an exciting time. I'm looking forward to it. I enjoyed what I played of FE6, so I'm interested in seeing what happens.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'll say I agree with this take. Maybe not like strongly agree, because I think there's a time and place for hand axe and javelins. Like, and then, like what you bring up is like the what enemies should be able to use them well, which I think you can just do by giving them skills, like a skill.
Yes, they could have something like close
set.
counter with a bow or something like that. Like, yeah,
Or that, yeah. I don't know. I like this question. I think it's
I think this is an interesting question. And I think what really surprised me is this is not a take I've ever seen before. Like, and I've spent quite a bit of time in the Fire
it's
Emblem
because
community.
no one cares about bows.
I guess that's probably
or
true.
archers.
I think
unless you're a Three Houses player, or I don't know, you
Ballisticians
believe in
were pretty
Leon
cool.
Solo. Sure.
But I think personally I'll come down on agree on this one too. I think there are a
Yeah.
couple of caveats needed for me to fully commit to this. I think we should get some late game 1-2 range options, and I think enemies should retain 1-2 range. But I think by and large the game would probably be more interesting if bows were your only 2-range option. I think the big one, if you look at like GBAFE, is bows on warriors, which is essentially pointless outside of like maybe the longbow or the brave bow, because I mean you saw it with Aggies, you just hand axe everything.
Okay, I guess. But yeah, no. I like this take. I think this is a good take.
So I think we're both on agree on that one. We've lined up pretty well so far. So, this is another take I've not seen before, and I read it, and I went, what? And then I read it again, and I keep thinking about it, and I just need someone else's input on this, to be honest. That's why it's on here. Playing on casual and not using rewinds is significantly more difficult than playing on classic using rewinds. What it basically comes down to is RNG rigging more helpful than sacking units?
That's what I'm thinking. Like,
And I think that's a really difficult question.
well, that's a good philosophical question. Like, it's the whole point of classic mode is that you don't sack units. This actually came down to my I was thinking about this, very, 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 very recently, like within the last 14 hours. Was I was doing the final chapter Engage, and I got like really desperate. I had to do it in 2 takes because I was miserable. I was considering, like, do I just do a sack play?
I got to my last pulse on that chapter as well, and like I'll keep discussion about it quite vague because obviously new game, don't want to spoil it for anyone who's not got that far yet. But yeah, I ran out of pulses on that chapter and was basically like, yeah, if I need to, someone's going into the meat grinder so I can kill this boss. Like, that option to sack is so powerful. It's so strong.
Yeah, no, the sack play is like very big in basically any Fire Emblem. Like, they teach you about it in freaking Shadow Dragon. Like,
Shadow Dragon's prologue, when you put
you should just do a sack play or whatever. And
you
like,
put Gordon on the fort, or
like
someone else, I guess, but it's
PvPs,
Gordon.
Like Fire Emblem PvPs, like everyone bemoans the sack play because it's like, well, okay, buddy, sure. So in my mind, I don't really like it in I don't really like this question, because I feel like the sack play is just so blasphemous in like in Fire Emblem discussion. Like, okay, sure, I guess.
I quite like a sack play. I'm a bit of a fan. I think if you can recognise, I don't need this unit anymore, and just throw them into it. I come from a background of like Pokemon Nuzlocke and things like that, where sacking.
I think a sack play can be interesting, but you're also you're failing to like recognize that the question's saying in casual mode.
Yes. And then you don't lose anything for sacking.
Yeah.
But I think I actually might. But then the other part of it is being able to sack. Does that make the game easier than being able to rig RNG?
Well, that's assuming that the classic mode player is, struggling that hard that he has to do, not do a sack play. And at that point, I think the like if the person's just pulsing or whatever, eventually they'll just go back and restart the game, restart the chapter. And then figure it out, I suppose, without like losing anyone. Because I don't know, I think that both players are just going to hit a wall where the sack player is gonna lose the amount of units they can sack eventually, and then restart, and then the classic mode player is going to run out pulses and then decide to restart.
I think quite a lot of it does come down to like the situation as well. Like if you're giving me Carlisle from FE8, yes, please give me Pulse. I would take Pulse over Casual there any day. But give me the capacity to rig that RNG, please. Or something like the I can't remember the names of them, but the 2 Great Knights from Chapter 2 of FE4. When you need to like defeat
Boldo or whatever.
Yeah, Boldo, yeah. Those two, being able to rig RNG against those two, way more valuable than casual mode in my mind. Like, that pulse there would make the game way easier. Obviously, you can restart the turn, but yeah, being able to just, like, jiggle your RNG a little bit so you don't proc Great Shield would be huge. But I think in most cases, the capacity to sack units would make the game easier. So I'm going to disagree with this take. I don't think it's clear-cut. I think there's situations where...
I think, like, in a game like FE4... maybe I would take Pulse over being able to sack in a game like, I don't know, maybe FE6 or well, actually FE6 is bad as them because that has same turn reinforcements, but like assuming that you're not struggling with the same turn, you're just struggling just with the non-BS forms of difficulty in that game. Sack play might be better because you just get so many units in that game. And it's kind of designed around sack plays anyway, I suppose.
Well, on casual, you would get those units back when you sacked. So.
Yeah, that's also the things. You just get them back, so... I don't know.
I think I'm going to come down on disagree on this one. I think the game is harder playing on Classic using rewinds than it is playing on casual.
Well, like, it's also like the sack play is... what if you just sack Nino on Unfulfilled Heart?
That is true. You do still have the capacity to sack on Classic using rewinds.
Like, what if you just sack Nino or Nino gets hit by bolting on a chapter? The Classic mode player is gonna have to rewind the whole or whatever to make sure Nino doesn't die all the time.
Yeah, true.
Whereas the Classic mode or the casual mode player will just sack her. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't have to worry about her for the rest of the map.
That's true. There are a lot of benefits to Divine Pulse other than just sacking, other than just rigging RNG. Being able to make up for mistakes, being able to, just pulse out of a green unit dying or something like that. I mean, I guess it happens quite early on, but Rodrigue in the Felix Paralogue, Pulse is appreciated there.
Oh, you know what? I totally misunderstood the context. Are you saying just for in general, or actually no? I still agree that like, I think the classic mode's still harder than just making casual. What? Now that you're saying that,
I think I'm going on disagree on this one. I think the classic mode's harder.
I'll just say disagree. I feel like it's. I think the person asking this is generally not thinking about like stuff like Rodrigue and more just playing normal chapters. Then I think playing on classic mode is obviously gonna be harder than sacking units. Yeah, I think classic using rewinds is harder than casual not using rewinds. Again, I think we lined up on that one. I'll say strongly disagree because I feel it's kind of
Okay,
ridiculous.
that's fair. I think there's definitely some instances where casual not using rewinds could be harder, but I think by and large, classic using rewinds is the more difficult approach. So, take number 4, and this is the last take taken from the wider Fire Emblem community. The final take will be given by me. So take number 4. Let's plays are a close enough substitute for playing a game to have an informed opinion. It doesn't apply to every series, but it applies here.
I'm just gonna go straight up and say I say disagree. Maybe not strongly disagree, because there are times where like I feel you definitely can be informed by Let's Plays. Like obviously, you and I probably have watched a lot of Let's Plays, and not even just Let's Plays, like LTCs or whatever, and that informs our discussion on the game. But obviously, you need to play the game to understand the actual pressure.
Yeah, I think playing the game gives a lot of context to what's going on.
Yeah. I think this also strongly correlates to a thing I've been thinking about recently, actually, in like your community. Is like, is the Oife bot? Can you just use Oife bot to determine the tier list? And
essentially, I think I might be coming in here with a hot take to counter a hot take, but I don't think playing the game is enough to have an informed opinion. Not like I don't think if I did a single playthrough of say FE6, I wouldn't have an informed opinion on that game. I think you have to sort of, if you want an actual informed opinion, it would involve a lot of sort of looking into unit stats, threshold, benchmarks, things like that, and that's where your informed opinion comes from. Now, I will just say now, just as an aside, I am going to say that because that's what I do on this channel quite a lot, so
I know
it gives
like,
me merit. But...
I know, like, you don't play, like, for breaking out, you don't literally do a whole playthrough using, I don't know, freaking...
Yeah, I've not used every build, but I can run the numbers and see this build is good. Like, but I do need that baseline knowledge of the game, like, oh, these are the threats on this chapter, these are the threats on these chapters, which I think comes a lot more naturally from playing. So I think it's a combination of the two, but I actually don't know if I would... I might agree with this, because I guess my point is I don't think playing the game gives you an informed opinion, and I don't think Let's Plays necessarily do either, but I think they could provide the same knowledge. Obviously, if you've played the game through like 6 times or something, you're going to have an informed opinion, but I'm talking a single playthrough. I don't think would give you an informed opinion on any FE, at least like a detailed one. You'd have a baseline understanding of a few units.
Yes and no. I think there's you need to understand the practicality of some things. And I like this goes back to like I think about a lot about how Rengor values stuff. You know, Rengor's such a wonderful figure in the community, but Rengor probably overvalues stuff like hit rates, which is why he doesn't like FE6, and then he thinks that hit plus 20 is the best overall skill in 3 houses. And like sometimes I think he overvalues it, but he is correct in saying that consistency is very key. And if you actually try to play the game, which I think it's funny because he says he doesn't play 3 houses that much, but if you actually try to play the game and don't run stuff like a hit plus skill, or you don't actually respect hit rates in FE6, you're going to have a very bad time. And if you don't actually understand that going in without playing the game, and like realizing, man, sometimes my units are just not going to hit all these 60s, I think in that scenario, like you need the gameplay knowledge to know. I agree,
but I think you can get that knowledge from a Let's Play too. I think it comes easier from playing the game yourself, but I think you could do you could watch a Let's Play, see that someone has like 60, 70 hit rates frequently, and go, accuracy is kind of a problem in this game. I don't think you necessarily have to play it for yourself to get that insight.
Yeah, but then it comes to, you can see that accuracy is a problem. What are you going to do about it? I think in something like the GBA games where you have a lot of options to correct a mistake, which is something I miss from like GBA Intelligence, is like is rescue dropping, like and how do you actually react to mistakes, or what are your backup strategies.
Yeah.
I think you need that, that backup tricks as well. Essentially, or like I don't know, I can like watch the engage LTC and understand, oh, these are all the warp skips I can do. But what if I am an idiot and burn all my traps?
That's true.
I need to know the backups for that, and like I can look them up, but I don't know, some people don't.
I think if you're looking things up like that, you're going beyond watching a specific Let's Play, right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming when we say this, we're not talking watching 14 Let's Plays versus playing the game once. We're talking like one Let's Play versus one playthrough of the game or something like that, like an equivalent amount of game consumption. I think I'm going to lean on agree with this, honestly. I think you can get pretty close. I don't think it's as good, but I would say it's a close enough substitute that you could get from watching a Let's Play versus playing the game yourself. I think the big thing you might miss, especially if it's a more sort of informed Let's Play, is that might already know threats and be playing around them without necessarily going into them.
Yeah, like that, sure.
But I think, by and large, I think a Let's Play is a close enough substitute for playing the game to get I wouldn't necessarily say I have an informed opinion, but to get a similar level of sort of knowledge from both.
I'm still gonna say disagree, because I feel like people watched maybe one Let's Play of Three Houses and then assumed it was Wyvern Emblem and then say it's Wyvern Emblem.
We're back to Wyvern Emblem again.
But I guess that's a double-edged sword, because if they watch videos like Jono Abos and learn how to play the game better, they can have a more informed opinion.
Well, I'm not sure that. The only Three Houses playthrough on the channel is the interesting build run. They'd be running around with Mage Leone and Great Knight Hilda and Bow Knight Anna and all this other nonsense. So, Trickster Linhart. We had some fun in that run. It was a good time. But yeah, a little bit of a difference on that one, but I think it's a fair take either way. I think it's definitely an interesting point. There's a couple here that I've just not sort of seen brought up before, so I think it's
I just feel like if you don't play the game and you're not verbatim copying like an LTC or a like maximum safety or like Iron Man players' moves, you're gonna be kind of lost in terms of what movements you should be doing. Sort of, like, let's say
I'm kind of lost when I have played games in what movements I should be doing.
Like let's say we told one of our viewers to play FE7 after watching our not interesting builds, our buy units run, under the assumption like, look, we're doing the run with like a bad cast. You should therefore you can probably beat the game with like the best units with no restrictions. I don't think I think that would be lost. Obviously, that's like an extreme example.
Yeah, I think there is some merit to that, though. Yeah, like you might miss out on a couple of intricacies where we sort of solved problems because we already knew they were there. So Ursula would be a good example if she didn't move.
Yeah.
Maybe that was a bad example, but like some of the things on Genesis, right? We pretty much handled them straight away and knew what we were doing because we have prior knowledge of that. I don't know if if you watched our Let's Play, you wouldn't necessarily get that from it because we sort of did it just sort of from inherent knowledge. So I think there is some merit to what you're saying there, for sure.
Maybe it's just like I'm looking at the question too literally. It's like, did you literally play the game or did you research the game?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I guess there is a point to be made there.
Yeah, but I feel like you should just play the game.
Yeah, I think you should also play the game because it's fun.
So I'm just going to disagree.
That's fair. So, we have one final point. Actually, yeah, we have one final point. This one was made by me. Didn't come from the community. It's not necessarily a point I hold, but it's one I'm going to pose to you. Everybody should watch the Fire Emblem 7 Buy Our Units co-op playthrough. I'm going to strongly agree with that take.
Are you freaking kidding me?
No, yes, I am. Fixed point paralogues are better than paralogues you can do at any point or during a large period of time.
Ooh, this is a good one.
So for people who might be missing a bit of context here, in games like FE7, for example, a paralogue pops up and you can either choose to do it immediately or you can't do it at all. in a game like Three Houses or Engage, Paralogues pop up and you get a set period of time to do them, or you can do them whenever.
I think this just goes back towards the open-endedness and like stuff like reclassing. Discussions where I think the problem with these type of with those like the latter type of paralogue is that they either are they're just like extremely imbalanced sometimes, where you're not they aren't designed around the player actually outsmarting it the way they intended it to be. So if I go back and I don't know, play something like I don't know, Land of Golden Deer after I got Warp and grinded up all my units, then that becomes like easy mode. Or if I go back and to the Gene Paralogue after actually no, I have a better example. If I go back, if I play the Byleth Paralogue, because I know you love that Paralogue.
Oh yeah, so
after
much.
I did fucking chapter 21 or 22, then yeah, that Paralogue's gonna be easy mode.
But you do then delay getting the rewards from that Paralogue.
Yeah, that is true. That being said, I find a lot of the rewards in Engage kind of doo-doo.
I think it very much depends. Like, for example, the really big one, the one I think you want like immediately as soon as it becomes available, is Ike's, because that gives you Wrath, which is a huge ability.
Wrath's probably like the one that one of the maybe 3 that I think are worth a damn in Engage. Arguably, it's the only one that makes like an apparent immediate difference that can't be replicated amongst any of the other emblems.
Yeah.
In that sense, yeah, there is sort of a opportunity cost for delaying that, as there is like delaying, I don't know, Thyrsis or whatever, or delaying the Master Seal from the Anna Paralogue. But the vast majority of the time, I find if the reward isn't good in a lot of these Paralogues, then why would I bother like stressing myself by trying to beat a annoying Paralogue?
Yeah.
When I can just come back to it later and trivialize it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just me because I'm a huge cheeser in Fire Emblem.
No, I'm in a similar boat. So where do you come down on this one?
It's so difficult because I think back to the FE7 one where like, man, if I could delay Genesis. until I got Farina, then yeah. But the thing with that is that's a challenge run where we put ourselves aside, like self-imposed challenge on us.
True. And I think if we were able to delay it and get Farina, that might even prove the point. That like delaying it removes a lot of the challenge from it.
I know like Mythos Zenith put that on Genesis is the best map in FE7, which I strongly disagree with, but you can like play that map fairly safely if you have good units on your team.
Yeah.
And like that, and they were correct in saying like you can just if you use your brain, it's not that bad of a chapter.
That's fair.
And in that sense, like if I used my brain and played the Lawrence Paralogue, assuming I didn't have Warp already when it went available because the Thyrsis is good, then I enjoyed playing Lawrence Paralogue early because it's kind of fun and actually challenging. So I'm going to say that fixed Paralogues are usually better. But
are you going to strongly say it, or are you just going to mildly say it?
Maybe mildly say it because the examples of fixed Paralogues are what games have them?
I know FE7 does.
FE6.
FE6. Does FE5 with guidance chapters? I don't know. I don't know enough about FE5 to make that sort of.
Oh yeah, FE5 does, I suppose, because it has the XX chapters. Yeah, usually those are more interesting though. But like, okay, I know both of us aren't FE5 players, but like, The issue then comes is like, well, do I like the guidance chapters in FE6 and FE7? Very dubious. Well, actually, no. I like Port of Dawn.
Yeah, I think the guiding chapters in FE7 are pretty solid, personally. The Merlinus Paralogue is fun. It's always a nice little early game challenge, but I think the Merlinus Paralogue wouldn't be fun if you could do it later, because it'd just be a boring chapter.
Yeah, well, I think I just agree with the general statement on the philosophy. Maybe like not the physical examples.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw it out there. I strongly agree with this. I like linearity in my games. Yeah, I think the fixed points paralogues are borderline always better than the variable time ones.
I'll just say agree because sometimes I just like to cheese stuff like Legend of Lake.
That's definitely fair. I think
or whatever.
I think most of the variable time paralogues would be better if you had to do them immediately. I think the game can then scale them to you better. I think there's always this weird question of, if you look at something like Black Market Scheme, for example, when are you meant to do this? Because if you do it too early, it's borderline, I don't want to say impossible, but it's ridiculously hard. And if you do it too late, it's an absolute cakewalk. And I know they give you a recommended level. That's just nonsense. Just ignore it. It means nothing.
Have you seen the turn count indicators on the engaged DOC paralogues?
No, I haven't.
They're bad. It's like I don't know if you ever played Mario Party 3.
Yes.
But they say like I remember if you like set up a party in Mario Party 3, the game tells you how many turns do you want to do you want for your like party session, and it's like 20 short session, like 35 normal session.
Oh my god.
50 turns, like good fun party. I'm like, no one's playing for 50 turns. And that's what engages paralogues are like Camilla's paralogue, 35 turns recommended turn count.
Jesus.
Like, shut up.
But yeah, I think I'm going to strongly agree with this one. I much prefer like the linearity of the fixed point paralogues, and I think it normally leaves them being a lot better balanced and more fun to do at that specific period of time than like trying to do something too early or too late, and that bit of ambiguity about when that should be done. Particularly with Engage's paralogues, actually, I think some of these get really trivial if you do them too early, or if you do them too late. Sorry.
They do.
I'm thinking the Lucina one, especially. If you leave that for like 2 chapters, it becomes just so easy.
It's either like they're trivialized by them being too coming back to them pretty late in the game, or they just are warp skips.
Yeah, and then I think the question sort of becomes like, well, why would I not wait to make it easier for myself? Like, and I think the game should be the thing answering that question. Like, you should be like, no, you do it now or you don't do it. And
well, at least with like 3 houses, and this is like a 3 houses W, is that I think part 2, you can just go back whenever because the time restriction isn't that bad. But in part 1 there is a time restriction that I find is sometimes strict. I find myself in a lot of places actually skipping stuff like Sword and Shield and Saros because one, it's an annoying chapter, and 2, I actually, if I'm committing to don't only do 1 weekend of Ox battles or whatever, I actually don't have enough time to do it.
That's fair.
In 3 houses. That depends though, and usually it still goes down to, well, if you're not putting those restrictions on yourself, then you can just do them whenever. But there is like still opportunity cost in 3 houses for waiting.
There is.
Whereas in Engage, no such thing exists. You can just go whenever. And like honestly, you don't miss out. Like a lot of the exclusive skills that unlock in Engage are just not worth it, I find. So
I definitely think there's some that are pretty good.
Besides Wrath and
Dual Assist Plus, things like that. The later forms of Speed
I think Dual Assist is a meme.
Oh my god, I think that's an entirely different take for perhaps a different video. Drop that one in the comments, it might come up later. But that's all 5 takes gone over, so just to clarify, you went on agree on that last one, right?
Yeah, I want to agree.
Okay, well, that's all 5 done. So, thank you very much for coming on.
Oh yes, no, my pleasure once again. I would have said something smart about you picking not that spicy takes, but no, there are some I like. I like the discussion about bows and
The bows one was interesting.
hand axes. It got me to allow me to talk about FE6.
You'll take any opportunity to talk about F6. You didn't mention Sophia. I'm quite surprised.
You know, I did see that one take on your Discord about Sophia was the worst unit in FE6, and I actually sort of I flip-flop on that one a lot because it's weird, and I know you don't know too much about FE6.
No, I don't. I'm not too informed.
No, I agree that she's not the worst unit in FE6. It's probably Wendy. There's a lot of properties of Sophia that are very minor, but actually do matter. And I'm not even talking about her guiding ring thing. I'm talking more about just being a bait unit or having movement in the desert, which always matters. But yeah, that's my mini.
Your mini 6
agreeing.
take.
Yeah, the mini 6 take.
It's all good for me. So, I think we'll wrap this one up here. Thank you very much for coming on.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, a link to Tegan's channel will be in the description.
Subscribe.
So that wraps up this Agree to Disagree. Massive thanks to Tegan for coming on the show, and make sure to check out his channel, which is linked in the description below. I would also like to once again thank everybody who backs the channel on Patreon. The support is greatly appreciated, and again, a link is in the description below if anyone else wants to support. If you want to discuss this video, the channel, or Fire Emblem in general, consider joining the Discord. Thank you all very much for watching, and goodbye.